Good evening, and welcome to the show. I'm Daedalus Howell, the editor of the North Bay Bohemian, and it is such a pleasure tonight to be part of this auspicious evening in which beloved writer-performer David Templeton will perform a word-for-word recitation of Kenneth Grahame's The Piper at the Gates of Dawn, the seventh chapter of The Wind in the Willows. This feat will be accomplished completely from memory and is a fundraiser for the Friends of the Petaluma River. You can see there's a way to donate above, and I encourage you heartily to do so. And those who do donate will be entered into a raffle with amazing prizes. In fact, to talk about this prizes, I'd like to bring on the man of the hour himself, Mr. David Templeton.
Hi.
Hello, sir. This is a big night for you. It's a big night for your brain cells. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about what you're going to accomplish and how you set about getting this massive text of 3,800 words into your mind.
Well, are you hearing me?
I am hearing you. Are you hearing me?
I'm not hearing me, so we're good. At the beginning of the whole pandemic thing, a lot of people were picking quarantine projects. I was memorizing poems and things, and I thought I would set myself a challenge. So I've always loved The Wind in the Willows, this story in particular, and I decided I would see if I could just memorize all of it. I have memorized other things in the past, done some one-man shows, which technically has twice as many words as this does. A lot of people have done solo shows. Sherry Lee Miller, did Mary Shelley's Body, which had more than twice as many as this. What makes this complicated is I didn't write it, so I can't give myself permission to make up something else. I have to be exactly word for word perfect, and that's a complicated thing. But it's been, because the words are so beautiful, it's been pretty great. Well, the world's been in a weird place for me to just be steeped in this gorgeous language by Kenneth Grahame.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to your recitation, and we should tell viewers that if there's a chance or a moment where you repeat a line, that's merely you ramping back up to hit the text word for word, which is what you're endeavoring to do. So the stream isn't broken. Yeah, that's
absolutely right. Yeah, if I stumble on something, I'll just go back and take the line again so people can hear it the way Kenneth Grahame wrote it.
That's amazing. And this, of course, is a fundraiser for the Friends of the Petaluma River. And we have some awesome raffle prizes. Shall I share some of them? This right here. Yeah, check this out. This is by a local artist, Ron Lamb. This is Mole, one of the lovely characters. This is what we're calling a character stone, and there's 5 of these guys, all hand painted and priceless when it comes to that kind of artwork. We also have in this huge basket all kinds of great things, not least of which being what we have here, David. This is the hardcover edition of The Wind in the Willows. It's annotated.
Yeah. So in addition to the text and a bunch of explanatory stuff, the letters that Kenneth Grahame wrote to his son Alastair that contained the beginning seeds of The Wind in the Willows are in their entirety in this book as well.
Wow, that's so. He used to write these stories for his son, and they became what you're going to perform for us tonight. That's pretty great. What we got to have here? This is I Am Pan. I think Pan makes a cameo.
The Greek god Pan makes an appearance in this story. So we have got some Pan-themed things. There is actually a Pan character stone that the artist Ron Lamb created as well.
That's great. That probably accounts for the pancake mix you've included here, right?
And with maple syrup. You got to have pancake. Exactly, right.
Yeah, and why not throw in some Wicked Slush, right?
Absolutely. Thanks to the Wicked Slush. And there's a couple of certificates in there and a T-shirt. Oh, I got Wicked in the Alley T-shirt. So it's like $100 worth of stuff that's just from the Wicked Slush folks on American Alley.
So great. And speaking of gift certificates, Copperfield supplied one here for $10 that comes with this lovely notebook, river themed notebook, so you can write your own river themed story right? I'm just going to
That's
put
a
this right here so we don't lose it. Just kidding. All right.
that's a heap
This
and
is a wonderful. Yeah, this is heavy, David. It's really great. Well, and you can be entered in that raffle if you donate $10 or more. Look up there; you can see where to do that online at PayPal and Venmo and everywhere else. So please do so. I am very excited for what's happening here, and I'm very excited for what's going to come next. Any words of encouragement I can give you? Like, don't forget, or thanks for the
yeah.
memory.
That that's a good one. Yeah, I'll work hard to remember. I hope that people just really enjoy the beauty of the story. It's the language is it's language we don't get to hear a lot in common day talk these days, and it's just beautiful. So go on the ride with it and enjoy it. I hope as much as I've been enjoying living with these words for the last 5 months.
Sir, break a leg.
Thank you. See you in a bit.
Well, now it's time for a coffee break. No, now it's time to go over some of the vocabulary that you may hear. Some of these terms are a bit different from common usage that you may be familiar with in our contemporary times. So I've got this wonderful list of vocabulary words that may feature in the story so you don't get confused. One of them is selvage. That's not salvage. That means, well, salvage means junk that's rescued after a shipwreck. This ain't that. This is the edge of a thing, usually a piece of fabric. So that's selvage. The next one you should know is Weir, as in Bob Weir, but not really Bob Weir from the Grateful Dead. More like a low dam that's built across a river to raise the level of the water upstream to regulate its flow. So that's Weir, not weird with a D. Another one I want you to know is skulls. And that's a weird one. Skulls, not skulls, but skulls. So not like, your head bone, but a small pair of oars instead that are used by a single rower. Next up, we have backwater, right? So anyone who knows Petaluma knows what that means. Ha! Just kidding. No, it's part of a river not reached by the current, which actually might be, well, imperious is the next word. The meaning has changed over the years. It used to mean arrogantly domineering, which sounds familiar, but now it in the story is going to mean urgent and commanding. The next one is august, which is August, not August, like the month, and that's an adjective meaning magnificent and majestic. Sward. Sward is a cool one. It's not sword. It's sward, which is the upper layer of soil, especially when covered with grass. And the last one you got to know is awful, which is full of awe. Full, not like terrible, bad. It's basically awesome, but in the vernacular of Kenneth Grahame's day, awful. So there we go. Now, without further ado, David Templeton will recite, word for word, The Piper at the Gates of Dawn.
The willow wren was twittering his thin little song, having hidden himself in the dark selvage of the riverbank. Though it was past 10 o'clock at night, the sky still clung to and retained some lingering skirts of light from the departed day, and the sullen heats of the torrid afternoon broke up and rolled away at the dispersing touch of the cool fingers of the short midsummer night. Mole lay stretched on the riverbank, still panting from the stress of the fierce day that had been cloudless from dawn to late sunset, and waited for his friend to return. He'd been on the river with some companions, leaving the water rat free to keep an engagement of long standing with Otter. And he'd come back to find the house dark and deserted and no sign of Rat, who was doubtless keeping it up late with his old comrade. It was still too hot to think of staying indoors, so he lay on some cool dock leaves and thought over the past day and its doings and how very good they all had been. The rat's light footfall was presently heard approaching over the parched grass. Oh, the blessed coolness, he said, and sat down, gazing into the river, silent and preoccupied. You stayed to supper, of course, said the mole presently. Simply had to, said the rat. They wouldn't hear of my going before. You know how kind they always are. And they made everything as jolly for me as ever they could, right up to the moment I left. But I felt a brute all the time, as it was clear to me they were very unhappy, though they tried to hide it. Mole, I believe they're in trouble. Little Portly is missing again. And you know what a lot his father thinks of him, though he never says much about it. What, that child? Said the mole lightly. Well, suppose he is. Why worry about it? He's always straying off and getting lost and turning up again. He's so adventurous, but no harm ever happens to him. Everybody hereabouts knows him and likes him, just as they do old Otter, and you can be sure that some animal or other will come across him and bring him back all right. Why, we've found him ourselves, miles from home, and quite self-possessed and cheerful. Yes, but this time it's more serious, said the rat gravely. He's been missing for some days now, and the otters have hunted everywhere, high and low, and haven't found the slightest trace. And they've asked every animal, too, for miles around, and no one knows anything about him. Otter's evidently more anxious than he'll admit. I got out of him that young Portly hasn't learned to swim very well yet, and I can see he's thinking of the Weir. There's a lot of water coming down still, considering the time of year, and the place always had a fascination for the child. And then there are, well, traps and things, you know. Otter's not the fellow to be nervous about any son of his before it's time, and now he is nervous. When I left, he came out with me, said he wanted some air and talked about stretching his legs, but I could see it wasn't that. So I drew him out and pumped him and got it all from him at last. He was going to spend the night watching at the ford. You know the place where the old ford used to be in bygone days before they built the bridge? Oh, I know it well, said the mole, but why should Otter choose to watch there? Well, it seems it was there he gave Portly his first swimming lesson, continued the rat, from that shallow gravelly spit near the bank. And it was there he used to teach him fishing, and there young Portly caught his first fish, of which he was so very proud. The child loved the spot, and Otter thinks if he came running back from wherever he is, if he is still anywhere by this time, poor little chap, then he might make for the ford he was so fond of. Or if he came across it, he might stop there and play, perhaps remembering it well. So Otter goes there every night and watches on the chance. You know, just on the chance. They were silent for a time, both thinking of the same thing. The lonely, heart-sore animal, crouched by the ford, watching and waiting the long night through, on the chance. Well, well, said the rat presently, I suppose we ought to be thinking of turning in. But he never offered to move. Rat, said the mole, I simply can't go and turn in and go to sleep and do nothing, even though there doesn't seem to be anything to be done. We'll get the boat out and paddle upstream. The moon will be up in an hour or so, and then we will search as well as we can. Anyhow, it's better then, going to bed and doing nothing. Just what I was thinking myself, said the rat. It's not the sort of night for bed anyhow. And daybreak is not so very far off, and we may pick up news of him from early risers as we go along. They got the boat out, and the rat took the sculls, paddling with caution. Out in midstream there was a clear, narrow track that faintly reflected the sky. But wherever shadows fell on the water from bank, bush, or tree, they were as solid, to all appearance, as the banks themselves, and Mole had to steer with judgment accordingly. Dark and deserted as it was, the night was full of small noises. Song and chatter and rustling, telling of the busy little population who were up and about, plying their trades and vocations through the night till sunshine should fall on them at last and send them off to their well-earned repose. The water's own noises, too, were more apparent than by day, its gurglings and cloops more unexpected and near at hand. And constantly they started at what seemed the sudden clear call of an actual articulate voice. The line of the horizon was clear and hard against the sky, and in one particular quarter it showed black against a silvery climbing phosphorescence that grew and grew. At last, over the rim of the waiting earth, the moon lifted with slow majesty till it swung clear of the horizon and rode off, free of moorings. And once more they began to see surfaces, meadows widespread, quiet gardens, and the river itself from bank to bank, all softly disclosed, all washed clean of mystery and terror, all radiant again, as by day, but with a difference that was tremendous. Their old haunts greeted them in other raiment, as if they had slipped away and put on this pure new apparel and come quietly back, smiling as they shyly waited to see if they'd be recognized again under it. Fastening their boat to a willow, the friends landed in this silent silver kingdom and patiently explored the hedges, the hollow trees, the runnels in their little culverts, the ditches and dry waterways. Embarking again and crossing over, they worked their way up the stream in this manner, while the moon, serene and detached, in a cloudless sky, did what she could, though so far off, to help them in their quest. Until finally, she sank earthwards reluctantly and left them, and mystery once more held field and river. Then another change began slowly to declare itself. The horizon became clearer. Field and tree came more into sight, and somehow with a different look. The mystery began to drop away from them. A bird piped suddenly and was still. A light breeze sprang up and set the reeds and bulrushes rustling. Rat, who was in the stern of the boat, while Mole sculled, sat up suddenly and listened with passionate intentness. Mole, who with gentle strokes was just keeping the boat moving while he scanned the banks with care, looked at the rat with curiosity. "It's gone," said the rat, sinking back in his seat again. "So beautiful and strange and new. Since it was to end so soon, I almost wish I'd never heard it, for it has roused in me a longing that is pain, And nothing seems worthwhile but just to hear that sound again and go on listening to it forever. No. There it is again, he cried, alert once more. Entranced, he was silent for a long space, spellbound. And now it passes on, and I begin to lose it, he said presently. Oh, Mole, the beauty of it, the merry bubble and joy, the thin, clear, happy call of the distant piping. Such music I never dreamed of, and the call in it is stronger even than the music is sweet. Row on, Mole, row, for the music and the call must be for us. The Mole, greatly wondering, obeyed. I hear nothing myself, he said, but the wind playing in the reeds and rushes and osiers. In silence, the Mole rowed steadily, and soon they came to a point where the river divided, a long backwater branching off to one side. With a slight motion of his head, the Rat, who had long dropped the rudder lines, directed the Mole to take the backwater. The creeping tide of light gained and gained, and now they could see the colors of the flowers that gemmed the water's edge. Nearer and clearer still, cried the Rat joyously. Now you must surely hear it. Ah, at last, I see you do. Breathless and transfixed, the Mole stopped rowing. As the liquid run of that glad piping broke on him like a wave, caught him up, and possessed him utterly. He saw the tears on his comrade's cheeks, bowed his head, and understood. For a space, they hung there, brushed by the purple loosestrife that fringed the banks, till the clear, imperious summons that marched hand in hand with that intoxicating melody imposed its will on Mole, and mechanically he bent to his rowing again. And the light grew steadily stronger, but no birds sang as they were wont to do at the approach of dawn, and but for the heavenly music, all was marvelously still. On either side of them, as they glided onwards, the rich meadow grass seemed that morning of a freshness and a greenness unsurpassable. Never had they noticed the roses so vivid, the willow herb so riotous, the meadow sweet so odorous and pervading. Then the murmur of the approaching Weir began to hold the air, and they felt a consciousness that they were nearing the end, whatever it might be, that surely awaited their expedition. A wide half circle of foam and glinting lights and shining shoulders of green water, the great Weir closed the backwater from bank to bank, troubled all the quiet surface with twirling eddies and floating foam streaks, and deadened all other sounds with its solemn and soothing rumble. In midmost of the stream, embraced in the Weir's shimmering arm spread, a small island lay anchored, fringed close with willow, silver birch, and alder. Reserved, shy, but full of significance, it hid whatever it might hold behind a veil, keeping it till the hour should come, and with the hour, those who are called and chosen. Slowly, but with no doubt or hesitation whatever, the two animals passed through the broken, tumultuous water, and moored their boat at the flowery margin of the island. In silence they landed and pushed through the blossom and scented herbage and undergrowth that led up to the level ground, till they stood on a little lawn of a marvelous green, set round with nature's own orchard trees, crabapple, wild cherry, and sloe. This is the place of my song dream, the place the music played to me, whispered the rat as if in a trance. Here, in this holy place, here if anywhere, surely we shall find him. Then the mole felt a great awe fall upon him, an awe that turned his muscles to water, bowed his head, and rooted his feet to the ground. This was no panic terror. Indeed, he felt wonderfully at peace and happy, but it was an awe that smote and held him, and he knew, without seeing, that it could only mean that some august presence was very, very near. With difficulty, he turned to look for his friend and saw him at his side, cowed, stricken, and trembling violently. And still there was utter silence in the populous, bird-haunted trees around them, and still the light grew and grew. Perhaps he might never have dared to raise his eyes, but that, though the piping was now hushed, the call and the summons seemed still dominant and imperious. He might not refuse were death himself waiting to strike him instantly, once he had looked with mortal eye on things rightly kept hidden. Trembling, he obeyed and raised his humble head, and then, in that utter clearness of the imminent dawn, while nature, flushed with fullness of incredible color, seemed to hold her breath for the event, he looked into the very eyes of the friend and helper, saw the backward sweep of the curved horns gleaming in the growing daylight, saw the stern hook nose between kindly eyes that were looking down on them humorously, while the bearded mouth broke into a half smile at the corners, saw the rippling muscles on the arm that lay across the broad chest, the long supple hand still holding the panpipes, only just fallen away from parted lips, saw the splendid curve of the shaggy limbs disposed in majestic ease on the sward, saw, last of all, nestling between his very hooves, sleeping soundly in entire peace and contentment, the little round, podgy, childish form of the baby otter. All this he saw for one moment, breathless and intense, vivid on the morning sky. And still, as he looked, he lived. And still, as he lived, he wondered. Rat, he found breath to whisper, are you afraid? Afraid, murmured the rat, his eyes shining with unutterable love. Afraid of him? Oh, never, never. And yet, oh, mole, I am afraid. And then the two animals, crouching to the earth, bowed their heads and did worship. Sudden and magnificent, the sun's broad golden disk showed itself over the horizon facing them, and the first rays shooting across the level water meadows took the animals full in the eyes and dazzled them. When they were able to look once more, the vision had vanished, and the air was full of the carol of birds that hailed the dawn. As they stared blankly, in dumb misery deepening, as they slowly realized all they had seen and all they had lost, a capricious little breeze dancing up from the surface of the water tossed the aspens, shook the dewy roses, and blew lightly and caressingly in their faces. And with its soft touch came instant oblivion. For this is the last best gift the kindly demigod is careful to bestow on those to whom he has revealed himself in their helping. The gift of forgetfulness, lest the awful remembrance should remain and grow and overshadow mirth and pleasure, and the great haunting memory should spoil all the afterlives of little animals helped out of difficulties, in order that they might be happy and light-hearted as before. Mole rubbed his eyes and stared at the rat, who was looking about him in a puzzled sort of way. "I beg your pardon, but what did you say, Rat?" he asked. "I think I was only remarking that this was the right sort of place, and that here, if anywhere, we should find him. And look! Why, there he is, the little fellow!" And with a cry of delight, he ran towards the slumbering Portly. But Mole stood still a moment, held in thought, as one wakened suddenly from a beautiful dream, who struggles to recall it, and can recapture nothing but a dim sense of the beauty of it. The beauty. Till that too fades away in its turn, and the dreamer bitterly accepts the hard, cold waking and all its penalties. So Mole, after struggling with his memory for a brief space, shook his head sadly and followed the rat. Portly woke up with a joyous squeak and wriggles of pleasure at the sight of his father's friends, who had played with him so often in past days. In a moment, however, his face grew blank, and he fell to hunting round in a circle with pleading whine. As a child that has fallen happily asleep in its nurse's arms, and then wakes to find itself alone and laid in a strange place, and searches corners and cupboards and runs from room to room, despair growing silently in its heart. Even so, Portly searched the island and searched, dogged and unwearying, till at last the time came for sitting down and giving up and crying bitterly. Mole ran to comfort the little animal, but Rat, lingering, looked long and doubtfully at certain hoof marks deep in the sward. "Some great animal has been here," he said, and stood musing, his mind strangely stirred. "Come along, Rat," cried the Mole. "Think of poor Otter waiting up there by the ford." Portly had soon been comforted with the promise of a treat, a jaunt on the river in Mr. Rat's real boat, and the animals conducted him to the water's side, placed him securely between them in the bottom of the boat, and paddled off down the backwater. The sun was fully up now and hot on them. Birds sang lustily and without restraint, and flowers smiled and nodded from either bank, though somehow, so thought the animals, with less of richness and blaze of color than they seemed to remember hearing quite recently somewhere. They wondered where. The main river reached again. They turned the boat's head upstream towards the point where they knew their friend was keeping his lonely vigil. As they drew near the familiar ford, Mole brought the boat into the bank. They lifted Portly out and set him on his legs on the towpath, gave him his marching orders and a final farewell friendly pat on the back, and pushed out into midstream. They watched the little animal as he waddled along the path contentedly and with importance, watched him till they saw his muzzle suddenly lift and his waddle break into a clumsy amble as he quickened his pace with shrill whine and wriggles of recognition. Looking up the river, they could see Otter start up, tense and rigid, from out of the shallows where he crouched in dumb patience, and could hear his amazed and joyous bark as he bounded up through the osiers and onto the path. Then the Mole, with a strong pull on one oar, swung the boat round and let the full stream bear them down again, whither it would, their quest now happily ended. "I feel strangely tired, Rat," said the Mole, leaning wearily over his oars as the boat drifted. "It's being up all night, you'll say, perhaps, but that's nothing. We do as much half the nights of the week at this time of the year. No, I feel as if I had been through something very exciting and rather terrible, and it was just over. But nothing particular has happened. Or something very surprising and splendid and beautiful," murmured the Rat, leaning back and closing his eyes. "I feel just as you do, Mole, simply dead tired, but not body tired. It's lucky we've got the stream with us to take us home. Isn't it jolly to feel the sun again, soaking into one's bones? And hark to the wind, playing in the reeds. It's like music, far away music," said the Mole, nodding drowsily. "So I was thinking," murmured the Rat, dreamful and languid. "Dance music. The lilting sort that runs on without a stop, but with words in it too. It passes into words and out of them again. I catch them at intervals. And then it is dance music once more. And then nothing but the reeds' thin, soft whispering." "You hear better than I," said the Mole sadly. "I cannot catch the words." "Let me try and give you them," said the Rat softly, his eyes still closed. "Now it is turning into words again, faint but clear. Lest the awe should dwell and turn your frolic to fret, you shall look on my power at the helping hour, and then you shall forget." Now the reeds take it up. "Forget, forget," they sigh, and it fades away in a rustle and a whisper. And now the voice returns. "Lest limbs be reddened and rent, I spring the trap that is set. As I loose the snare, you may glimpse me there, but surely you shall forget. Row nearer, Mole, nearer to the reeds. It is hard to catch and grows each moment fainter. Helper and healer I cheer, small waifs in the woodland wet. Strays I find in it, Wounds I bind in it, bidding them all forget. Nearer, Mole, nearer. No, it is no good. The song has died away into reed talk. But what do the words mean? Asked the wondering Mole. That I do not know, said the Rat simply. I passed them on to you as they reached me. Ah, and now they return again, and this time full and clear. This time, at last, it is the real, the unmistakable thing. Simple, passionate, perfect. Well, let's have it then, said the Mole, after he had waited patiently a few minutes, half drowsing in the hot sun. But no answer came. He looked and understood the silence. With a smile of much happiness on his face, and something of a listening look still lingering there, the weary Rat was fast asleep. The Piper at the Gates of Dawn, from The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. Thank you.
Wow, that was extraordinary. What a beautiful story, and how beautifully recited, David Templeton. I can't believe you did that completely from memory. Amazing. And how wonderful a fundraiser for the Friends of the Petaluma River. Speaking of which, I would like to bring on the executive director of the Friends of the Petaluma River, Stephanie Bastianon, and we can discuss what we just saw. That was stupendous.
Yeah, wow, I forgot how wonderful it is to have somebody tell you a story and just sit back and listen to the words. It was fascinating.
Yeah, and David's such a good performer. He's so great, and it's just wonderful. He brought the characters to life. The lyricalness of Graham's writing itself was really, you could tell David really loves the story, and he brought a lot to it. It was really quite special.
Yeah, I love that dreamlike quality to it. That, trying to hold on to that beauty of your dream that you had and waking up and trying to cling on to that. It's a great just way to describe life in some ways.
Yes, and drifting down the river. And speaking of rivers, we got one.
Yes. Yes, and it's getting dredged right now, so it's an exciting time for the Petaluma River right now.
That's so great. And what does this portend once it's dredged? Are we able to enjoy it better? Is it going to? Will it actually flow, as they say?
Well, it's a
I mean,
tidal slough, so it's always flowing in and out, but we'll be able to get more boats on there, so we'll be able to have more adventures like Rat and Mole, going out exploring the river. We've had a lot of folks that can't make it into the river right now because it's so shallow in places. I know at our dock we have a hard time getting in at low tide, so we're looking forward to a dredged river and just more fun in boats.
Yes, the Petaluma River, it needs more depth. We all need more depth. My personality is too shallow,
Right?
so I like, and so to help in this effort, people can still donate. In fact, we're taking donations up until 6:30. Well, beyond 6:30 for donations. But if you want to be part of the raffle, that's a $10 donation or more. And at 6:30, we're going to stop, and all the entries will be tabulated, and you can win all of these wonderful prizes. I'll just do a brief recap. Here's Mole, right? Can you guys see that? All right. We got 4 more of those characters drawn by, or painted by Ron Lamb. And of course, the story you just heard is in here. And then there's the notebook and the gift card from Copperfield's Wicked Slush's contribution, which is an enormous contribution. Pancake mix. How can you go wrong? It's all here. so, so I hope people.
And you get the great feeling of donating to friends, right? I mean, we are doing some great stuff out on the river right now. We wrapped up a really successful summer camp, having kids get outside, a lot of them for, the first time getting out there during the pandemic, and we're starting an after-school program right now, and we have some more camps coming up too. So really important just to support the kids to get outside right now and have that opportunity for some regular interaction with other kids. So any donations are helping that, and that's really important.
Yeah, and the river is really important. Can we talk a little bit about what the watershed means to Petaluma and how it works here?
Yeah, I mean, it is really the heart of our town. Petaluma wouldn't be here if it wasn't for our river. It was the great, economic driver of the town for a really long time. Not so much anymore, but there is a lot of industry still happening on the river. And, it brings a lot of people to our town. We're known as a river town. And so it's really important to support that and make sure our river stays healthy and vital.
So you see where to donate, people. Go to Venmo, do it on
There it
PayPal.
is.
You can even do it on Facebook. You're already on Facebook, some of you. We can tell. We're watching you. Your camera's on, our camera's on. We're all part of this now. That's so great. Well, shall we bring back Mr. Templeton and discuss the brilliance we just saw unfold before us?
I'm ready.
Hello, David. How are you,
Hi,
sir?
I'm
Are
doing
you?
great. We got through that. That was really fun.
Yeah, and
That
you
was
and it was
There were a
perfect.
couple of moments of sheer terror, just for a brief moment, but they were eclipsed by the beauty of the language, and it was really fun. Thank you. It was so fun to share it with you and whoever else is watching this. That was really a blast.
Yeah,
it
I
was so
was
much fun
impressed.
to watch live too. Just knowing that you've memorized this and it's makes it that much more exciting for the audience.
It does. It adds a certain kind of, I wouldn't say tension, but a kind of inherent drama to the story itself. Because in as much as we're rooting for Rat and Mole, we're also rooting for you, to guide us through it. So that's great. Yeah, and just as a feat of memory itself, how did you begin the process of memorization? Is there like a trick that you use, or?
I, about 100 tricks. There, every new sentence, every new paragraph, when you're memorizing a play or something, especially something complicated like Shakespeare or this, um, it presents its own challenges, and there are different ways of approaching it. But really, with something like this, the main trick is just not giving up. It just takes a long time. It's work like learning to type or learning a language. It's just it's just repetition, 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 and then once I get it kind of in my head, then I find things like certain parts set to music, looking for repeating syllables and sounds, just whatever I can use to give me a handhold or a foothold to get from word to word and piece to piece. And it's really just something you have to set out to do and decide you're not going to stop however long it takes. And I have to admit, when I first started doing this, I thought it would take me 2 months, 3 months. The language is so tricky that it's taken me 5 months. Of course, I've had a job as an
Yeah.
editor at the Argus Courier and other things, so I couldn't devote all my time to it. But it was a great 5 months, and now I want to keep it. So I'm going to make it part of my daily practice to hold on to this, so that if some school or drama class or Rotarian group wants somebody to come and recite this and talk about the process or talk about Kenneth Grahame, I'll be ready to do that at a moment's notice. So that'll be another challenge. That's my next step.
That's fascinating, man. What was it about this particular work that attracted you to it? Is it a favorite, and was it something you grew up with?
Well, yeah, I in actually in the Argus this week, there's one of my culture junkie columns where I talk about receiving this book when I was 7 years old from my dad, who would read it to me, and I remember where I was when I cracked it open for the first time and read the first chapter. And it's always stuck with me. And this particular story, there's just something so weird about it. I don't think I'd ever read anything quite like it, and it sparked an interest in Greek mythology because I wanted to know more about who this weird horned demigod was showing up in the middle of this story about people on the river. And it's always stayed with me. In fact, just the other day I was going through some papers from years ago, like 10 years ago. I had this little piece of paper. You can see this. It's a little picture of Pan and Rat and Mole. There's still the little pin marks in it. This was pinned to my bulletin board at a job I'd had like 3 jobs ago. So these characters in this story and this moment when they meet Pan has obviously been something that's been important to me because it's just been there forever. So when I was trying to pick something to challenge myself with, I looked through a bunch of different books. I thought of monologues. And then I saw The Wind in the Willows on the shelf and went, I'm going to do The Piper at the Gates of Dawn. So
amazing. And one of the observations that comes up a lot. Oh, I'm sorry, Stephanie, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, that chapter is so different than the other chapters of the book. And I'm wondering if you, obviously you're drawn to this chapter, if you have any insights into Kenneth Grahame and where this chapter came from. So different.
Well, I do know that it was either the last chapter he wrote or the second to the last chapter. We're not quite sure, but most of the stories that people are familiar with in it about Toad and his automobiles and all the crazy stuff that happens with him, those were the original Wind in the Willows stories that Kenneth Grahame told to his son Alastair. And then when they were separated a lot, and he wrote letters to Alastair and would tell these stories about Toad and Mole and Rat and Badger. And later on, when he decided to turn them into a book, he started with those and he fleshed them out. And then he didn't have enough for a book. So he made up other stuff, the backstory of how Mole met Rat and how they met Mr. Badger. And they added a bunch of other things. And then as it got close to publication time, he was told it was still too short. So he wrote 2 more chapters years after he'd originally come up with these stories, and they were Wayfarers All and Piper at the Gates of Dawn. He had written books where Pan showed up before, so Pan was a thing in his life. And so he just, I guess, decided while writing this dreamlike piece about awakening to beauty and this wistfulness that I think he was feeling at that time in his life, he brought Pan into it and plopped it in the middle. And it surprises some people. This is different, but it's one of the most beautiful pieces of writing, and it's, like I said, it's such a beautiful thing to be able to speak into existence, those words.
I'm pretty sure I've seen Pan at the banks of the Petaluma River on occasion. At least I've,
There's all types out there.
You wouldn't remember that.
That's the thing. I just can't recall. Let's
so
talk
many
about
characters
Pan.
out in the river.
Yeah. Give us some background for those who aren't familiar with the Greek and Roman god. I guess Greek Pan and Faunus in Roman mythology.
I'm not sure what his Roman name is. That Faun is basically what they call a half human, half goat, and so Pan was this sort of second, third tier god that originally in the ancient Greek writings, he was kind of a scary figure because that's where the word panic comes from. He would show up and the goats would freak out and run everywhere and people would run away. But some people would suddenly be filled with this completely primitive connection to nature and run away and want nothing to do with civilization again. So he was sort of a chaotic figure. But in Victorian times, for some reason, the Victorians, who were very prim and proper, they loved Pan. There were all kinds of stories about him. I mean, Peter Pan came in part from that. In the original play, Peter Pan played a panpipe. He was Pan-like in a lot of ways. And there are all kinds of Victorian stories where Pan shows up for good or bad. And sometimes people say, "Oh, this story must have flipped out the Victorians," but actually not. They really thought he was kind of cool, but rather than see him as a negative figure, they saw him as symbolic of embracing nature and the importance of natural things, rivers and trees and all of that. And because Kenneth Grahame grew up fondly remembering some childhood days on the river, I think it was just natural for him to take that figure that represented the beauty of nature and put it together with his memories of this river that he spent his favorite days on.
That's great. And what river was it? The Thames? Where are we?
It was the Thames, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I grew up along the Petaluma River, and I have a similar. I did not have the same experiences, obviously, as Rat and Mole, but I do have the similar associations of a kind of bucolic pastoral experience, and those. For the most part, that remains my sense of the river. Stephanie, is it still like that? Can we still have those kind of outdoorsy, natural experiences, unencumbered by fawns and pans?
Yeah, probably no pan out there, but I mean, most people, all they see of the river is just what goes through town, and there's a huge stretch of the river that goes through the Petaluma Marsh, very bucolic. Not a lot of human structures out there. In fact, if you go out into the marsh and you take one of the little side sloughs, you're pretty low down. If you're in a kayak, you really can't see anything but the marsh around you. So yeah, it's a great place to get out and kind of escape some of the town and humanity as they were talking about.
What also struck me as interesting with the Piper at the Gates of Dawn is the literary device of wiping memories, right? Which we see represented all the way back to Shakespeare with Midsummer Night's Dream with Puck, also kind of a Pan-like character in some ways. To I don't know, Men in Black uses a memory erasing device. What is there a name for this motif other than whatever happens on the river stays on the river? I mean.
I don't know. There probably is. I mean, there are names for every little tiny invention and convention of writing, but I don't know what it is for that. That'd be fun to find out. It works really well in this case because though it does, I do wonder why Pan wipes their memory and then basically has the reed sing a song saying, "I wiped your memory." And you're gonna you'd think he would have just left it as it was, but it's a beautiful.
I love that. Yeah. I love that concept of it was just too much beauty for them. If they remember it, they would just be sad for the rest of their lives, and so they wanted to take that memory away from them so they wouldn't miss it. And such a novel concept, right?
Yeah. Right. So, you guys, there's just a few more minutes left for people to make a donation of $10 or more and become eligible to win the raffle. The raffle closes at 6:30, and there will be some tabulations, and we'll announce the winner here. And, of course, contact and reach out and connect with them later to get the gift basket delivered. Here it is again. I have it right. Whoa, I have it right here. Whoa. It's a lot of loot. Can I share some more of the of Ron Lamb's depictions of the characters on these art stones? It's character stones.
Sure. I should say Ron has been painting rocks. I mean, it's been one of his many quarantine projects. He started painting like these amazingly complex Monet's reproductions and things on rocks. And when this thing came around, I asked if he'd be interested. There's Pan. In painting the characters on rocks, and like a day later they arrived. It was so cool. Thank you so much, Ron, for doing that.
Yeah, we have to shout out all of our donors here. Yeah, there's so many people who are so generous. Ron, of course, our artist, and then Amber Rose Reed over at Copperfield's Books, and then of course Wicked Slush, Dave and Juliet Picorni, and Susan Pantaja also. Look at these guys. Aren't they great? That's Toad. I think, well, this is Toad? Yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
That's Toad.
Very cool.
I think Ron mostly used the Disney version of those characters. There was, in the 50s, there was an animated version of The Wind in the Willows that did not include the Piper at the Gates of Dawn. It's mostly Toad. And, of course, that became Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, one of the original rides at Disneyland.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, and so you can win these in the raffle by donating $10 or more and become part of that, and you too can get sued by Disney. No, just kidding. Huh? No, they're beautiful. He did a great
Yeah,
job on those. This is really, yeah, really special.
classic.
I was going to say, Ron has been painting those and then hiding them around town. And he didn't even know about Petaluma Rocks, the Facebook page where people paint rocks and then leave them around town and take pictures. So he found them later, but he's been going as far as Angel Island and distributing his painted rocks around for people to find.
That's pretty great. I love that. Do you think he's put any of these along the river so that we can get out on a canoe or a paddleboard and find them there and put them in our own personal rock art collections?
Wouldn't it be cool to find wouldn't it be cool to find a rock with pan on it somewhere along a river?
Yeah, I mean, I can totally arrange that right now, man. I can just check one of these guys out there and can make a sort of Easter egg hunt of it. No, I won't do it.
Well, we are having our river cleanup next Saturday. So, we always find some pretty odd things out there. Maybe this time we'll find some painted rocks. Who knows? But yeah, it's always a strange assortment of things you find in the creek. If anybody wants to join us, our website's up there. You can go to that website and register to come out and help clean up trash from the river. Last time we did it, we took out about 2,000 pounds of trash in July. And that was really just like scraping the surface. Unfortunately, there was a lot that we didn't get to. So we're really hoping to get out there, and we're praying for a lot of rains this fall. So we want to get that trash out of there before the rains hit and wash it all out to the coast. So yeah, come out and join us, please.
I'll tell you, years ago when I was working at the Argus Courier myself, I had one of those. I emptied a bottle of wine with a buddy of mine, and as a joke, we put a message in the bottle. We wrote a little message and put it in the bottle. Despicably, we threw it in the river, and a few weeks later it came back to me at the Argus Courier. This guy puts it on my desk and says, "Don't do that," because we had signed our note, so he knew who it was. So yeah, it'll come back to you if you put anything in the river that's not supposed to be there, people. So
yeah, it's a tidal slough. It might have gone out a ways and then came right back. I do have our winner for the basket, if we are ready.
Yes, David. Yeah.
Shall we? Drum roll. So the winner is Sherry Lee Miller, and I will be. Can you guys know her? Seems like a friend here.
Yeah.
So we'll connect with Sherry and make sure she gets this basket.
Congratulations, Sherry. Very cool. Thanks for participating. Well, thank you to everyone. This has been such a wild ride, so to speak. David, congratulations. That was such a performance. It's so wonderful. And I'm just grateful to have been able to witness it this close. So we want to thank all of our donors, of course, and let's thank Joe Wicks of Wicks Media, who helped make this happen, and the multi-talented Andy Templeton, of course, who also helped make this happen. And thank you, Stephanie, Executive Director of Friends of the Petaluma River, and thank you, Mr. Templeton, for a wonderful performance, and I leave it to you.
Well, I want to continue that thank you a little bit. Something like this might look relatively simple, but it was actually very complicated. And Joe, with all the technical stuff, it was amazing, everything he pulled together to put this in all the different places. And he does this kind of thing professionally. So if you would like an event like this yourself, Joe Wicks, we can get you in touch with him. And Andy, this might look like I just sat here and told a story, but it was fully directed by Andy. He was my director on this, who helped me bring it to life and shape the characters. So lots of thanks to all of them, and to Friends of the Petaluma River for giving me this opportunity to share it. And Daedalus, thank you for being the host. And I thought I would just end with paraphrasing, because I closed the book and I haven't memorized it, but Kenneth Grahame at the beginning of The Wind in the Willows has a moment where Mole has just met Rat, and they're on the river, and Mole has seen a boat and the river for the first time, and he basically says, "Is a river really all that wonderful a thing? And is a boat really that special?" And Rat, a little stunned, says, I'm a water rat. I live in the water and on the water and by the water. It's in me, under me, all around me. And I can tell you there is nothing, simply nothing, quite so wonderful as simply messing about in boats on a river. So thank you to Kenneth Grahame for inspiring all of this and inspiring me. And thank you to all of you for watching. So I guess we say good night.
Thank you.
Good night.